Hey guys, Kevin here at eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install eTrailer's line of double eye leaf springs. Leaf springs are one of the most essential components of the suspension for your trailer. Not only do they provide a place for your axles to actually attach to your trailer, but they also help get rid of all that road shock and support your trailer so that you're not just hitting every single thing as you go down the road like an old wooden wagon would back in the day when they first invented the wheel. These leaf springs are all going to come with nylon bushings in them so that it helps them glide a little bit better. Typically, you'll either have a nylon or a bronze bushing. If you plan on using wet bolts, I recommend swapping out that bushing for a bronze one because grease that you would use with a wet bolt will eat up those bushings. One of the biggest questions we get here all the time is, hey, can I just swap out my leaf spring based on the amount of leaves that are in it? That isn't really a great indication of what the actual capacity of that leaf spring is because the thickness of that leaf is going to change depending on the amount of leaves that are in it. And you could have two completely different weight capacities with the same amount of leaves in it. So that really isn't a good indicator of what you're going to need. What you're going to do instead is measure from the center of the eyelet on both ends of your leaf spring. You want to get that measurement, and then you want to know what the capacity of your axle is. And that's what's going to help you determine exactly the right fit for your leaf springs. If you need help determining the correct replacement components of your suspension, maybe your leaf springs, your equalizer, shackle straps or bolts, or maybe those U-bolts, go ahead and reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, and you might just get your question answered by me or one of my other fellow coworkers. As far as installation goes, this is going to be a very, very messy job. As you can see, we have tons of rust and dirt and all kinds of debris all over the floor. Definitely recommend wearing some gloves, wear some clothes you don't care about. Wear eye protection, especially when you're under your trailer. Typically, even if it's a brand new trailer, there's some kind of coating or something that's gonna fall down and get in your eyes and it can just ruin your day. Other than that, it does take a little bit of patience. Hammering in your bolts can be quite a bit of a process. There is a lot of going back and forth from under the trailer and out, so definitely make sure that you properly secure the trailer with some floor jacks that are correctly rated for the weight of your trailer. So with our wheels off, you can take a good look at our suspension here. As you can see, there's already been some work done on our suspension, which honestly isn't really up to standards here. If you look a little bit closely, you can see our shackle bolts are actually two different sizes here. And that's not really safe, that's not okay. There's a whole bunch of play in here. I'm sure our bushings are probably completely gone at this point with how much this trailer sits outside and gets pretty roughly used. Same thing with our equalizer, it's pretty worn out as well. When your suspension starts wiggling like this, you run the risk of things actually just breaking off and then you have a loose axle. Can cause all kinds of damage, could cause your trailer to sway back and forth. You could end up getting in an accident, all for some minor parts that could easily just be replaced properly. All right, so to determine the correct replacement leaf spring for our trailer here, what we're going to do is we're going to measure from the center of the bolt hole on each side, which is basically going to be the center of our double eyelets. So what we're getting right now is right at 25 1/8. So what we'll do from there is go on our site and we'll look at our axle weight, which on this one I believe is a 7,000 or 8,000 pound axle, and then we can narrow it down by the length so that we can get the correct size leaf spring. So because of the sad state that our trailer's in right now, we are going to just completely replace all of our suspension. And to do that, I'm going to first want to get some jacks under our frame. So I have our frame lifted up and then I put some extra jacks that are adjustable under our axles so that I can kind of move it up and down as needed, just so I can get the new leaf springs, shackle straps and bolts, and our new equalizer all in place. Now when you're doing this, you're going to want to make sure that you don't use an impact on the bolt head side, because all of these bolts are going to have teeth on them, and those teeth bite into our hangers, into your shackle straps, and if you were wanting to reuse those, you can end up rounding them out, especially on the hangers. We don't want to round that out anymore because then our bolt's not really going to be able to bite in once we replace it. So I'm going to be using my impact on the nut side and pulling all that off, and I'm just going to go little bit by little bit. And like I said, just make sure that you have that axle supported, because the second that you pull these bolts out, there's nothing holding it up. See if we can persuade this out. There we go. And right there, you can see those teeth I was talking about. A little bit more. There's teeth right here along the bolt head. And those bite into there so that it can't move, because every piece of this should have a either bronze or a polyurethane or nylon bushing that's going to sit in there and allow it to spin on our bolt. So the next thing I'm going to do is remove my U-bolts. And it's these bolts right here and this plate. And what we're going to do is also replace that. Over time, as you start pulling that down and it's used, those bolts actually start to kind of bend and they'll kind of stretch out. So at this point, they really just need to be replaced. So if you ever take yours off, go ahead, just get some new ones and replace it. Otherwise, they may not match up correctly once you try to put them back on. And honestly, just for safety, it's better if you go ahead and replace it. So sometimes you're not going to be able to get those nuts off, or for whatever reason that U-bolt is really just kind of tied down on there too tight and just doesn't want to come off, and you will unfortunately have to cut it off. So if you go ahead and use an angle grinder and cut it off, just make sure that you're also using the proper safety equipment, such as gloves and your safety goggles. So now I'm going to go ahead and put in our new equalizer. If you were going to replace yours, same thing with our leaf springs, just measure from the center of your eyelets, and then you can find the correct one on our website. This is just a standard one, but there are upgraded ones that have rubber dampeners in them, and that's going to give you a much smoother ride, less road shock throughout your trailer, but not really needed with the type of trailer that we're doing today. Bolts as well, there are a few different sizes and a ton of different lengths. So make sure that you measure yours correctly, make sure that you get the correct one for the width of your leaf springs. There's also regular bolts like this one, or wet bolts, which are going to have a grease zerk fitting on it, which you can easily lubricate. We aren't using that today for this trailer, so I'm going to go put my bolt head on the inside and the nut on the outside so that it's easier to do work on our trailer. I'm going to go ahead and just start the nut right now, but I still have to hammer in our bolt head because we have those teeth. So I'm going to get under here, and as I do this, I'll hammer it a little bit in. If it doesn't want to go all the way in, then I can come back out and start tightening down our nut, and then take a little bit of that play out and then hammer it some more. Typically, you won't have issues with just the hanger ones. It'll typically always be the ones where it's on the shackle straps where you got to sit there and play with it back and forth. Tighten it down. And with this, we're going to go until it's just nice and snug. We don't want to pinch in our hanger too much, have it start bending that and not be able to move our equalizer. All right, so when we're looking at our leaf spring, there's going to be these little bump outs on it, and that's going to sit in the center of our U-bolt plate and then also onto our spring seat on our axle. So as you can see, I can stick my finger in that hole. We're going to want our bump out on our leaf spring to sit in that hole. So this is a little bit of a juggling act to kind of hold it all in place, but we'll slip our leaf spring in. And then what I like to do is just kind of put my knees up there and hold it in place. And we're going to take our U-bolt plate, and we're going to have it so that our little tabs are facing down, because we want those facing away from our leaf spring. Put that on there. All right, now that I got that in place, I'm going to drop my U-bolts in. And then we have a lock washer and a nut. I'm going to just hand tighten those on for now, just to get this to hold it in place, and then we can come back and fully tighten it down. So now I'm going to go ahead and just snug these up with my wrench. I'm going to make sure that I go back and forth. I don't want to have any of these really too long compared to any of the others, because then we're going to have our plate sit crooked. Basically, once we get to the lock nut or lock washer on there nice and tight, we can go ahead and switch over to our torque wrench and tighten them down.
And that torque setting is typically going to be a range on these U-bolts, and it really just depends on the thickness of the bolt itself.
So next step, I'm gonna go ahead and put my bolt through my back hanger here. I am gonna have to play with this a little bit. Typically, you will have to kind of move your jack up and down for your axle. I'm also gonna kind of have to push over just a little bit. The axle's kind of leaning back on this side. So, as you can see, I'm right about here. I'm gonna have to push it forward so I can get that hole lined up. And if you're having issues with it, you can also go ahead and take a ratchet strap and just hook it up to your axle and then run up to that second axle and just kind of slowly pull it forward, which I think I'm gonna do just because I really don't wanna have to push too hard against this just to get that bolt through. All right, I got my strap running across here and I got that kind of pull on my axle just a little bit up so I get this hole lined up, and I got the bolt in just a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and persuade it in with the hammer. And now I'm gonna get under there and get those teeth on the head of that bolt to bite into our hanger. Now we can go ahead and throw on our nut and tighten it down. Just like before, we want it nice and tight, but not too tight to where it starts to bend our hangers. So now what I'm gonna do is take my new shackle straps and my bolts. I am gonna have to get those to bite in, so once I get this on and get the nuts on, I am gonna have to sit there and hammer it in. Down there a little bit. Get that in. We'll take another shackle strap, place that on there. You have to kind of fight that just a little bit. We'll get our nuts started on it just to kind of hold that in place. And then I'm gonna go on the back and start hammering it in.
And as you're doing that, you can come up front and keep tightening up that nut as well. Now take out some of the slack.
Now we're gonna go ahead, and now that I got those bolt heads seated in there, I'm gonna go ahead and take out that slack. These we also just want snug. We don't want to have them too tight. So pinch this and it won't be able to glide back and forth as it needs to. All right, all good to go. Now that we got this side all done, we're gonna go ahead and just repeat that same process on the other side. There is one other thing that I did forget to mention while we're placing our leaf spring in place. Make sure that you put that retention clip going towards the front of your trailer when you're installing them. All right, so now that I have this side done, we can go ahead and repeat this whole process that we did on this side over on the other side. Well, now with both sides complete, that'll complete our installation and our look at eTrailer's line of double I leaf springs. My name's Kevin. Thanks for watching.